It's just a value thing. So it's like a watch that might cost 50,000 at retail because the demand is so crazy, it's ballooned on the resale market
Mhm.
where you have guys that might be willing to pay upwards of $200,000 for a $50,000 watch. And so when those prices, the Michael Rubin video is like emblematic of that because a lot of those prices are not retail prices, but it is the current value of the timepiece. So one of the things I always preach to like clients or friends is to insure your watches.
Mhm.
And if they're valuable watches or highly coveted watches, insure them for market value because
Mhm.
literally what that means, if someone was to rob me for my watch, I make a profit.
Exactly.
So it
Exactly.
should never be a thing where like you die over a watch.
Over a
Someone's
watch.
like, give it to me, take it. I'll hit insurance and a watch that cost me $10,000 might pay me out 30 grand.
No doubt, no doubt, no doubt, no doubt. Where are my most beautiful queens in the house? Where are my most beautiful queens in the house?
Hey everybody, it's your girl Jamilah, and this is the Queen's Address coming to you from New York City. Today, we have watch connoisseur and collector from the Wrist Check podcast. Okay, got the main man Perri Dash in the building. Perri, how you doing?
I'm good.
Thanks for joining
Absolutely.
the
Thank you for
Queen's
having
Address
me.
today. We're so glad to see you.
You make me feel very important.
You are, and you are, and welcome. And so, before we really begin and get in the interview, this is a remarkable piece you have on the watch you have on today. And can you talk a little bit about this watch?
Sure. So my passion in terms of watch collecting, it really lies with vintage watches. Omega happens to be one of my favorite brands, and this was one of the first vintage watches that I purchased for myself. This is a vintage gold capped Omega Seamaster. I forget the exact reference number, but this is from 1964. So
Whoa,
it's almost 60 years old, this timepiece.
rare.
Um, but I love it. It's got a sunburst dial. Um, it's got the Omega symbol, which I always thought looked cool. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any lume, but totally fine. And it's a workhorse. It happens to be actually one of my most accurate watches, in spite of how old it is.
Okay. And so, what type of movement powers the watch?
So it's a mechanical movement. This
Okay.
one is automatic.
Okay.
Automatic movements they're called in the industry, we call them self-winding movements. So all mechanical watches need to be wound,
Mm-hmm.
but automatic watches have a rotor on the back of the movement, so that as you move, as you walk, as you're doing whatever you're doing about your day, that rotor will spin and wind up what's called the mainspring. The mainspring is like the heart of the watch that keeps it beating, and it's literally just like a coil. And so as the coil tightens, that's your power reserve that'll keep the watch running. Um, Once it's completely uncoiled, the watch will stop moving. It'll stop ticking.
Oh, wow. Wow. It's a science to it.
There is, I mean, there are mechanical marvels that you
Yeah.
wear on your wrist.
I would say.
That's part of the appeal for me, is the fact that like you have people who have studied intensely and have innovated and have built these mechanical contraptions that account for one of the most precious commodities that we have, which is time.
Absolutely. So watch culture. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So what got you started with watches? What kind of said, you know what, I think I'm gonna become a collector?
I didn't, it's funny. I didn't actually set out, I didn't have it in my mind that I was going to be a watch collector. I collect a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I know what really sparked the interest. I mean, obviously, I think for growing up, it was like seeing my dad and my grandfather, they owned watches.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of made me look at it like, oh, this is a part of like the culture of, sort of what it means to be like an adult, what it means to be a man, a father, etc. Because I saw these two great men in my life have and own watches. But then I worked for Ralph Lauren for a time. And Ralph is an institution. You get an amazing education just in terms of fashion, luxury, and what luxury really is, because it's not about the money, though the money is, it's nice to be able to be in a position to afford these nice things, but you get a crash course. And in the business that I was part of, we actually sold vintage timepieces. And just, because it was part of our business and I had to drive it, I had to be educated in that world. And being able to spend time with these timepieces, to talk to the buyers, that were purchasing these pieces for us to sell, really made me appreciate it. And I think from then on, I just decided to dive in.
It was just,
yeah, it was like
the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Well, can we talk a little bit real quick about just, first of all, I'm a fan. I'm just really excited.
I'm appreciative of anyone that listens to us for.
No, I just want to talk about the Wrist Check podcast because I'm learning so much. And, what made you want to start the podcast?
So that's a great question. I have the two co-hosts I have on the show. They're really amazing people. Rashawn Smith and Ben Grion.
Shout out to them.
Shout out to them. Both, have an affection for timepieces themselves, and they had taken 2 positions in the industry, and we were kind of ran around the same like neighborhoods, and oftentimes we would either get lunch together, or we would get dinner, and we would just find ourselves talking about watches. And then, like, simultaneously at that time, I started consuming a lot of watch content, and I didn't see very many people in that space that looked like myself, or the 3 of us. And so I thought, okay, maybe there's an opportunity here to enter that space, and sort of, plant the flag first. But also I thought what it was lacking was, I think watches can be kind of intimidating. And the goal I thought was to make it more accessible in terms of conversation. And we wanted to appeal to people who were seasoned collectors, but also people who were, might just be considering purchase their first watch and never bought a watch before.
Right, exactly.
And so the idea was sort of to take and emulate what we were doing when we were by ourselves off camera and just talking about watches, and then just put that on film. And so we just decided one day to go for it, and we did. And amazingly, people actually are tuning in and they're enjoying what we're doing. And that's really nice. And so it's growing. We're not huge. It is. It's nice that like the audience is like really engaging with us. And recently we started like a private chat group, and that's blowing up. I mean, they're going nonstop. If I were to show you, they're going right now. Just like it's crazy. And the reception, I think, is what's keeping us going. And but that was really it. Just entering the space first and making sure that there was representation.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad for that. Now, I had this is a little bit more personal. Do you have a favorite watch that you've recently added to your collection?
It depends on how recent you mean. There was a watch I added to my collection this year that I've never shown. I don't wear very often.
But you're excited about it?
I own it. I am very excited about it. I haven't shared it yet.
Waiting on the right time.
I'm just waiting on the right time because it's very, very. And it was a watch that I fell in love with, and I never fell in love with a watch like I fell in love with this one. I saw it, and I was just like immediately, I could not stop thinking. You said, about
"Okay,
it was just
that's
like,
it."
I mean, I text my wife. I was texting friends, and I was like, "Yo, I don't know any. I need to know about this watch.
Right?
What is this? How can I get this? Like, I'm in love with this thing." And I was fortunate enough, with the help of a friend, to be able to acquire it, and it's sitting in my safe.
Okay.
I wear it occasionally, but very. I think the last time I wore it was on Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay.
So
okay. Well, we'll be waiting to
Yeah.
see it make its debut sometime
Yeah.
soon, or
It's a good one. It's something that it goes under the radar. Like I think most people would see it and they won't pay attention to it.
Right, right.
But I don't know.
It caught your eye.
It's special.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
VSOP.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a question about the stainless steel trend that's
Sure.
been happening. What's your personal opinion on the stainless steel trend and the watch?
It's been a trend that's been
culture.
around for a long time. I
Mhm.
think in terms of trends that we're seeing now, it's kind of, you know how like we talk about like fashion and stuff, you say things are cyclical.
Mhm.
It's just cyclical. In the 1970s, you had a gentleman named Gerald Genta who was a designer, and he's an amazing designer. And he happened to have designed two of the most iconic steel sports watches.
Mhm.
Um, the reason why that was so groundbreaking at that time is because they were luxury timepieces.
Right.
And back then in the 70s, that was like an unheard of thing, a luxury timepiece that's not precious metal.
Mhm.
But you could not escape what this man contributed in terms of like design language. And
Right.
it was one of those things where it was released, people saw it, and it immediately resonated with people. And like, I get it.
Right.
And so you're starting to see that come back, where the steel sports models, which at retail are some of the most affordable timepieces, are now the hardest watches to get.
Mm.
And those are the ones that are increasing in terms of value exponentially on the secondary market. So you have watches, you take like a Patek Philippe Nautilus, the 5711 reference, which is like everyone has to have now. When that watch was in production, it retailed, I think, it started out at like 20,000 and got up by the time it was discontinued, because they increased prices each year for inflation. Got up to like $27,000.
Oh, wow.
But that watch today, if you were to buy it unworn in the box, plastic, you're going to pay six figures for it.
Right.
So
it
you talk,
appreciates.
yeah, and there's watches in Patek's catalog at retail that cost exponentially more than that watch, but because the demand is so crazy, the value because it's just astronomical. And so if you see someone now with a Patek Philippe Nautilus, it's kind of like, who are you? What do you do? Because they had to spend some major coin to get that watch.
Right. Absolutely. Now I had a just a thought. If you had one piece of advice that you could offer to a young or new watch collector, what would it be? Because sometimes it can be intimidating.
Sure.
If you don't really know what you're looking at, or you're just starting out and you're a beginner. What would you say to someone who doesn't know?
My main advice, what I preach all the time, is start off buying what you like, but things that you can afford to like lose or damage, right? So, because I think with anything, you're going to spend those first few purchases. If you're going straight into luxury, you might end up buying things and making like a lot of mistakes and getting things that you don't like, or not understanding how to actually go about acquiring these watches and wasting a lot of money. And you have the opportunity, I think, in your formative years of watch collecting, to become familiar with things like case size, legibility, how important that is to you, different types of materials. Do you prefer bracelets? Do you prefer straps? Do you like NATO straps? Do you like leather straps? There's so many nuances to a watch that you want to be versed in before you make that investment and you make a big leap. I meet people all the time that they're buying their first Rolex and they'd have no idea how to use it.
Right.
And when you don't know how to use a mechanical watch, it's very easy to break.
Right.
So they get it, and 2 weeks later it goes in for servicing.
Right.
And then when it goes in for servicing, you realize, oh, I don't have a watch for the next maybe 2 to 6 months.
Right.
Right. So just to familiarize yourself, great brands like Seiko, Casio, though they do like the digital things that are really fun, they also have higher end models within their lines. Belova is a great brand to try out. Longines. There's so many brands that offer a wide variety of access in terms of price point and a variety of product to choose from, to be able to play around and see what it is that you like. So I think experimenting first the lower end before.
And do your research.
Do your research,
Yeah.
you know, and the research is yourself. It's like, just discover what it is that you actually like.
Exactly. Now, do you have an opinion on the best women's watch that's trending right now?
It's
From a ladies,
the ladies.
for the queens.
I think, yeah. I mean, I bought my wife her first watch last year. I bought her a Cartier Panther. I think a Cartier Panther is a great first luxury timepiece. It also happens to be unisex, and I think that's a conversation that more people need to be having. Is that we don't need to gender watches.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen guys pull off a Cartier Panther, and I'm like, wow, that actually looks really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's a trend where women are wearing bigger watches,
Right. It's
and
more
guys
fluid.
happen to be wearing smaller watches.
Right.
I personally prefer smaller watches. I try
Mm-hmm.
not to wear anything bigger than a 40.
Mm-hmm.
The only watch I have in my collection that's bigger than that is I have an Omega Speedmaster. It's a 42 millimeter. And again, going back to like saying, like experimenting with timepieces, the reason why the 42 works on me in that model is because the lugs twist in.
Okay.
So the wearability, how it actually looks,
Okay.
because it's not uniform. You might have watches that are this size, and you know you have two different models, and they just don't wear the same. You know, the contours are different, the design is different.
Mm-hmm.
But me personally, what I like to see, I think the Cartier Panther is a
Mm-hmm.
great piece.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pricey piece, but it's accessible enough where you're gonna treat it right. It's
Right.
a quartz watch. You don't have to worry about winding it. It's battery operated,
Right.
which I think is great, because then that teaches people that not all luxury timepieces have to be mechanical.
Exactly.
There are some amazing brands that do quartz timepieces. Grand Seiko is another one, and they happen to make, I think, amazing watches for that they try to market to women today as well. So I think Cartier is always great, because at the very least, it's like a piece that you won't regret.
Right.
You can hand down. Someone
Mm-hmm.
will always appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And relatively speaking, they maintain or hold their value. They'll dip under a little bit, but never too much. You spend $4,000 on a Cartier.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a pinch, you need to get rid of it, you'll get $3,500 back for it.
Yeah. So
You know?
you can kind of teeter in the balance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's dope. So hip hop
Sure.
has just celebrated 50
It's
years
amazing.
and I just wanted to talk a little bit about just hip hop lyrics, and how in the hip hop community we hear about Rolex and Jacob and Company and Movado watch, tennis for the, we have our lyrics, and we have Cartier, and the list goes on. And so luxury watches have been a symbol of success within the culture for a long time. The extravagant look with the design. And now we see the alligator leather bands, exotic materials, expensive metals. And what I want to know is the most expensive watch the best watch with our hip hop community, or do they, because we hear about Rolex all the time. We hear about Movado, and these are great watches. Sure. And so, should we be, looking to like add different flavors outside of the ice dripping and the
absolutely
8 different time zones?
Yeah, I think people should experiment with different brands. Rolex is an incredible brand. Yeah, they make an incredible watch. They happen to produce the most watches out of anybody in the watch industry in total. They do about 1.2 million, 1.3 million units a year is what they produce. It's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot of watches. Yeah. Rolex is, they're respected for the innovation. They developed the first waterproof watch. They actually also developed the automatic movement. Those two words that they put on the dial, Oyster Perpetual, it means exactly that. That's their contribution to horology. Oyster for the waterproof case, and Perpetual for the self-winding movement. And the cool thing about Rolex, and their founder, Hans Wulldorf, who's an Englishman, he kind of did those two things and then dropped the mic, and it was like, all right, I'm done. And they still innovate, but not to the level that they did when they delivered, these two things to the watch industry. And so today, I think they really just kind of rest on their laurels. But if you want a luxury timepiece that you can beat up
Mm-hmm.
and not treat like it's precious,
Mhm.
Rolex is incredible for that. Even though people treat it like it's precious,
Mm-hmm.
they're tanks.
They're
You know, they're
durable.
built to last. It's
Yeah.
not uncommon for Rolexes to exist 50, 60, 70 years. We're coming up now where, you know, you're going to start to see a lot of centennial pieces. You're going to see a lot of pieces people own
Mhm.
that making 100 years. But to go back to that point, you know, they have watches that cost, you know, $5,000. They have watches that are over $100,000.
Right.
Most of what you're paying for is, you know, if it's a precious metal piece, you're paying for the metal. If it's gem set, you're paying for the stones. I used to work in jewelry. I know that stones happen to not be that expensive. You're paying for labor. You know, you're paying for masterclass gem setting if it's factory.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes into like a whole nother debate that's popular in hip hop right now. Is it factory? Is it aftermarket? If someone wants to bust down their watch, go for it. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why factory is king is because you literally have people that have dedicated their life to the art of gem setting,
Mm-hmm.
and they're really, really amazing at it. Rolex happens to be one of the brands that does it the best. If you're afforded the opportunity, the luxury to be able to purchase a gem set Rolex, it's a special piece, because I don't think that there's really anybody in the industry that can quite do it like they do. When you saw the rainbow Daytona
Mm-hmm.
and that series of sapphires switching from color to color, like no one
It's
had done that
incredible.
like that back then. You know,
Yeah.
Patek does amazing gem setting. Audemars Piguet does amazing gem setting now. And they've always done, but I think Rolex, I think they do it the best.
So there's a reason Rolex is mentioned so much in the hip hop lyrics.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a status symbol, but it's also a quality, incredible.
It's a quality product,
amazing.
And
yeah.
when you read and understand the story of Hans Willdorf, what you see is that he was a marketing genius.
Mm-hmm.
They have one of the biggest brands globally recognized in the
Right.
world, and even to someone who, you know, it might not be familiar with their entire catalog, I would say arguably, you know, a two-tone Rolex Datejust with a fluted bezel is probably the most recognizable watch in the world. You know,
Wow.
it's just like the marketing machine that they've built is amazing.
Mhm.
They are responsible single-handedly for people wanting to wear watches.
Wow.
I would give that credit to them. Absolutely.
I talk about influencers.
Yeah.
And so recently we've seen Michael Rubin
Sure. Yeah.
had a white party in the Hamptons, I believe.
Mhm.
And there were videos just out of control about the types of watches that were seen amongst all the A-listers who were there.
Yeah.
And so I've just been thinking about this all day, just leading up to the interview. What would Perri Dash wear to the white party?
What would I wear?
Yes, I'd like to know. I'm dying to know.
That's a really good question, because in once you get dialed in to like collecting watches,
Mhm.
what you vie for is not so much the attention,
Mhm.
but the conversation.
That's what yeah.
And so I would be thinking about who's in that room. And obviously I'm going to be thinking about Jay-Z.
Shout out to Jay-Z.
I want Jay-Z to look at my wrist and say,
go, okay.
What you got on?
Right.
That's what I'm gunning for, right?
Exactly.
I want Jay to come over and be impressed.
I say, okay.
Because he happens to be a hell of a watch collector.
Right.
He has the eye, he has the knowledge, and he, with the help of some of his pals, I know Alex Todd, are curating a collection with him that I think will go down in history as arguably one of the best watch collections in the world. So what I would wear, I would probably wear a piece from a brand called Grubel Forsey.
Okay.
That makes amazing timepieces. They happen to be insanely expensive. I cannot afford one. Right? And it's not for that reason. It's not for the price point, but they're watches that most people would not bat an eye at because they don't know what they're looking at.
Right.
But to
But
a
the
watch
ones who
collector
know,
or a serious watch enthusiast,
if
you know what a Grubel Forsey is when you see one, and you don't really see them.
Right.
And it is like top tier, state of the art watchmaking. They do timepieces that have 4 tourbillons in them. They're just crazy timepieces. They're incredibly accurate. They're not really loud in terms of like
The ticking.
they're
and
not
all
flashy,
that. Okay.
but they're eye catching. You look at them, it's like, what the hell
What
is that on your
this?
wrist?
Yo, yeah.
So I would probably wear one of those, and I would akin that to Jay wearing a Richard Mille 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when he broke out the RM01, and one of the first people, there's a picture of him at Soul Train Awards accepting an award, and he has one on his wrist. This is 2003.
Okay.
It's 20 years ago. No one really knew what they were. It was their first
knew.
watch.
Wow.
You know, but he owned one.
Right.
And so I can imagine people, you know, in rooms that he's in, like, what the hell?
Right.
You got
What's
on
up?
your wrist?
What's up? What's good? Yeah.
And then that sparks up a conversation. And I think the reason why those conversations are so important, I think it's really cool that a lot of these young guys in hip hop are getting into it, is because that is the collecting watches has become the there's a term I'm looking for. It's the great equalizer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where you could be in a room with a bunch of people that don't look like you and you don't have any cultural ties to them.
Mm-hmm.
How do you break the ice?
Right.
How do you equalize?
It's a conversation starter.
Right?
Yeah.
And for people to have that kind of do that for them,
Mm-hmm.
everything, I see it all the time, everything breaks down.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer about who you are, where you're from, how much money you make. It's like, tell me about this thing on your wrist.
Right.
And then you start there, and then it moves into, I want to know more about you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's not because you're looking for an opportunity or trying to figure out how you can afford this. It's like, no, you're clearly an interesting person because you made a very interesting choice.
Right.
I want to know more about you. And that in itself opens up crazy doors,
I'm sure,
and opportunities.
Yeah.
And opportunities have opened up for us with the podcast
Mm-hmm.
through situations like that, seeing people who look like us wearing timepieces. And it's like, sure, there's curious, you know, how did you get it? But it's like,
Yeah.
we need to talk.
Curious.
What's happening here?
Right.
Because I didn't know that people cared.
Yeah.
About
It's a
this.
whole movement. It's
It's
a
a
whole
whole
community.
thing.
And
And-
doing my research, I said, no.
It's cool to see now where it was like before, like celebrities would go to parties and it was like, who were you wearing?
Right.
Right. In fashion. But now it's like everyone's like, the watch game is like, that's got to
It's
be on point, like,
replacing the large chain and the
100%.
iced out wrist and the, you know, it's like, okay, this watch, let's talk about this watch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I love it. I love the shift that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because it seemed like just the jewelry. I mean, shout out to people who wear lots of jewelry, you know,
Sure.
but
There's nothing wrong with that. That's your thing.
there's a little bit more of character with vintage watches. And,
Yeah.
you know, there's a certain, like, you know, there's an air of sophistication, you
Yeah.
know, and elegance that comes along with a
Because you have
made-
you gotta educate yourself before you make those purchases. This is not like, it's a lot of money, you know,
Mhm.
to spend on watches, especially when you decide I'm gonna be a collector. That's a big investment you're gonna make.
Mhm.
So you got to be educated. You want to make sure that where you're spending your money, you're putting it in a good place.
Right.
You want to be knowledgeable about what it is that you're purchasing, who you're purchasing it from, especially when you get to vintage, because vintage can get scary. It can get dicey. You know, the value is in maintaining originality.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of stuff out there that's not original. People replacing dials, internal parts. You know, you might spend a lot of money on a timepiece and then years later discover that it's not original and you lost a lot of money.
Right. Yeah, you can always take an L. Now, what's the craziest watch you've ever seen? Who had the craziest
The
watch?
craziest watch
Yeah.
I've ever seen. That's a really good question.
Just the craziest, most, you know, like, have you seen a
I've seen some
crazy,
crazy
insane watch
I've
in
seen
your lifetime?
I've
I'm sure
seen-
you've seen quite a few.
I've seen a lot. The craziest watch I've seen.
Yeah. I mean to stress you out, brother. I
Nah,
just-
I'm trying to think. The craziest timepiece I've seen. I've seen a lot of crazy ones.
Mhm.
Jacob the jeweler, the big Jacob with the
I mean, Jacob's stuff is insane. Actually, matter of fact, yeah, there's a Jacob watch that he does that I forget what the name of it is. And it has it's like 3D something. But the whole watch is like a sapphire like orb.
Mm.
And
Sapphire.
it's
orb.
just a sapphire case, and it's like it almost looks like a bowl. And it's being held together. I'll share a photo with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's being held together by like a precious metal sort of like cage, and then it has like a round crystal, almost like a bubble crystal, and inside there's like all of these crazy complications. I think this particular one might have been a GMT. GMT stands for Greenwich Mean Time. So those are watches that tell you like dual time zones.
Mm-hmm.
And it had like a Earth orb inside spinning
Oh my goodness.
in what was the universe. So he had like the solar system laid out in the watch, and the idea is that you would get the solar system and the planetary alignments inside the watch to align with what was actually happening in our solar system.
Yo, that's the craziest
It's
watch.
insane.
I didn't even know
there's
that
a couple
existed.
of watches like that.
Mhm.
Patek has one that people call the Celestial.
Celestial.
Yeah, it's called the Celestial, and it kind of does the same thing, but it looks different. You don't see the orbs or anything like that, but it shows you the position of everything in like the Milky Way.
Mm.
But everything Jacob does is like, extra,
Yeah.
and he actually fit like the entire solar system into a watch. I can't for the life of me remember where on the watch it actually displayed the time because there's so much going on.
It's probably very busy.
But a watch like that, you don't wear it to tell the time. You
Right.
wear it as like a mechanical marvel. You can tell the time on it, but no one's going to point to that watch and say, "Hey, do you have the time?" You're going to point and be like, "What the hell is that? What's going on?" And then you get to like talk about all the complications that exist inside it.
Yeah.
I don't think Jacob gets enough credit for being a fine watchmaker.
Creative stuff too.
He does exceptional. He makes exceptional watches.
Mm-hmm.
He has the bling stuff that everyone loves. That's great. That's what sells. But when you get into the high horology stuff that Jacob does, it is insane. And people in the US at least don't really appreciate it. His watches do very well in the Middle East.
I'm sure.
They do, because the Middle East consumer, they buy everything. Especially like in Dubai. Like I think that's probably got to be like one of his top markets, because those guys are very, very serious watch collectors.
Yes, they are.
And they don't like wearing anything that's pedestrian. So it's not about necessarily flexing with like the most expensive piece.
It's exclusivity.
Exclusivity.
Yeah. No, I have a loved one in Abu Dhabi.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Like unbelievable. Yeah, go right
Sure.
ahead.
That's kind of Floyd's thing.
Floyd Mayweather.
Oh yeah.
Is the most expensive, the Guardians.
Oh yeah, he loves that. He loves that. He loves it. But that's part of the culture too, and there's nothing wrong with that. A friend of ours we had in the show, we're privileged to call him a friend. He goes by Mayor. He happens to be Fat Joe's best friend. He's a big watch collector. He's been buying watches for years. And they shop with these guys, Pristine Jewelers in the city. And Pristine Jewelers, shout out to them. They're blowing up right now. But they do their own timepieces. And they're like flooded. It's like the whole watch is a gem set. And, I'm pretty sure Floyd owns one of their pieces. And that's part of it. I think with hip hop, it's still, the flash is part of the culture. And you're never going to escape the flash, right? Like the appeal of wearing a Rolex for 99.9% of people that own one is because it's a Rolex. The idea that you want to be seen, you want to be admired, you want to be respected. And
status.
And these,
symbolic.
It's cool. Like,
I made it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, but that's exactly what it is. Like, it's cool to collect these things for what they are, but there's also a point about it where it's just like it's a trophy. I've had a milestone. Maybe I closed the deal. I did something really awesome, and I want to encapsulate this moment in time, this occasion, with something that speaks to that record, that acknowledges that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
And definitely. Floyd is he's got a lot to celebrate.
Yeah, he's got a lot to be thankful for.
So he's got years to catch up on celebrating.
Absolutely. And so, and so I'm going to switch gears here for a minute. So you're a true New Yorker.
Yeah, born and raised from the Bronx.
From the Bronx, from the Boogie Child to the Bronx. And just to the core, you're a New Yorker. And so I just wanted to ask someone who's been born and raised in New York, where do we find the best pizza
There's
in New York
no right
City.
answer.
Does Perri Dash have a favorite pizza spot in New York, being a true blue thoroughbred New Yorker?
All the pizza spots I grew up on are gone,
Oh
unfortunately.
no, oh no.
You know, you're gonna get great pizza in New York regardless. You know, the Italian community that exists in New York are gonna make sure that there's always like really amazing pizza available.
Mhm.
There's a couple of spots I could recommend. There's Upside Pizza
Mhm.
that's on Mulberry Street
Mhm.
in downtown New York. They do an amazing pizza. Bleecker Street Pizza is pretty amazing. Um, there's a new place I think in Brooklyn that everyone's been talking about. I've not been there yet, but I heard a lot about them. I think it's called Cuts.
Mhm.
Um, but I hear that they're pretty good. Scars Pizza
Okay.
is awesome. You know, that's in the Lower East Side. I think what's cool with New York, what's happening right now is, if I can use Scars Pizza as an example, there are restaurants that are becoming cultural hubs.
Mhm.
And Scars Pizza is one of those places. Scars Pizza is like, it's a great pizza. You
Yeah.
get a great slice from there.
Mhm.
But it's a cultural hub because anybody goes to Scars Pizza. So you can walk up in Scars Pizza and you can see your favorite rapper.
Yeah.
You'll see, you know, an athlete on any given day. You might run into Scar and, you know, Scar's wearing the Scar Pizza Air Force Ones that he did with Nike. Like,
Right, yo, it's
that's the
crazy.
cool thing
Yeah.
about New York is that the level of hustle and entrepreneurialism that exists here allows for people to take something like pizza and to flip it on its head and use it to create opportunities for themselves and their family and just like expand.
Mhm.
So check out Scars Pizza.
Shout out to them. We're gonna check them out. Y'all go check
Yeah,
them out.
Scars is dope.
Shout out to Scars. And so I wanted to just kind of switch gears here. So you come from a very well-known family. The
Sure.
Dash family is a distinguished family in the entertainment business. And I wanted to ask you, what was it like to grow up a Dash? Did you guys have like the awesome Thanksgiving dinner, like on the Wiz with Big Mama and the jazzy aunties and the funny uncles?
Initially we did. The family is
You have a big family, huh?
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Shout out to the Dash family.
There's a lot of us here. There's a lot of us, and the Dash family is from Barbados, so there's a lot of us in Barbados. When I was a kid, I remember what it was like pretty vividly, and it was awesome. I mean, I went to summer camp with all my cousins.
Gotta love the cousins.
Yeah. It's a tough family. You know, everyone is incredibly entrepreneurial, which creates a competitive spirit amongst the family. It always seems like everyone's in competition with one another. So when you talk about I'd say this, any Dash get together is a Michael Rubin party.
Oh, I can't listen.
Every get together is a Michael Rubin party. Everyone's flexing on everybody. But it's a lot of love. It's a lot of love. The family is it's a special bunch. It's a privilege to be part of it and have grown up with a lot of these people. You know, I don't get to see them all as often, but we try to all keep in touch as best as we can. Thank God for, you know, social media. Allows us to check in and tap in with one another. But I'm always proud and amazed to see what the people in my family are doing.
Right.
You know, shout out to my cousin Darren. He's a real estate agent in Jersey and is really forging a path for himself with, you know, developing the cannabis industry in New Jersey and helping young men and women of color go through the process that they can be able to open a legal dispensary. You know, I got a cousin Stevie in the Lower East Side that has a retail store called Lambs that's doing really, really well. And he's involved with the culture. You know, someone who's well known in fashion and music and respected. And you know, everyone's got their thing that they do, and it's just nice. It's inspiring to see them, you know, succeed and go out there and just make stuff.
Absolutely.
You know, so. Yeah. But growing up in the family, it was It was fun.
Thanksgiving was lit, huh?
Thanksgivings were
Good
pretty
dinner
lit.
and
Yeah.
laughs and
Lots of laughs. That's
Yeah.
anything the family does. It's a lot of laughs. You got to come correct. They don't come at all because you get laughed out. But amazing memories.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit to the viewers about how I met Perri Dash. It was at your store.
Oh yeah.
And I had a book. And you accepted my book.
Yeah.
And I just want all the viewers to know that Perri Dash supports Black women. He supports Black authors. And I just want to say thank you for accepting my book that day.
Thank you for giving it
And
to
I
me.
was just really, really glad. And it, you didn't hesitate. You were like, yeah, sure. And you were just so cool and chill. And I'm just so glad that you have love for Black women and you have love for Black authors.
Absolutely.
And just the support was just, I just wanted to publicly to the
I
just wanted to say thank
seeing
you. And
people win.
yeah, and we had a great conversation too about music.
Oh yeah.
At the time, I believe King's Disease 2 had just come out, and we were talking about Hit Boy.
Oh yeah.
And everything, and shout out to Hit Boy, shout out to Nas. But I just also want to know what are you listening to right now? Because we had a really great conversation about the songs, and I was like, you know what? I bet he's got a lot of some really good ones on his playlist.
It's funny. I was talking to our producer the other day because he's a big music guy and he produces music himself. He's the producer of our podcast. Shout out to Ashraf Rashid.
Good name.
Yeah, we talk powerful names. You come from a powerful family too. They're special people.
Yeah.
We were talking about music. And he's always like, "Man, what you listening to?" And I had a moment where I'm a big music head. I collect records, but I cannot stop listening to Larry June. It's just a lot of Larry June right now. Shout out to Larry, who we've actually talked to, and he's going to be on the Rich Check Pod. Larry's a watch collector.
We'll have to watch out for that.
Yes, we're just working on scheduling, but we're going to head out to San Francisco and catch up with him very soon.
Oh, cool.
He invited us to a show here in New York. We went there and we had an amazing time. Shout out to him and David Ali, his manager. But I love Larry's music because it's just motivational rap. And I was just like, this doesn't really exist like that. Like the person that got the closest to it was Jay. And you'll take what you get from Jay, but Jay still tells you like stories and stuff like that. But the way Larry does it, he's like the Roy Ayers of hip hop. It's just a flood of positive music. And
it's beyond a vibe. It's
a
frequency.
And it's a frequency. And I love his like mantras and the stuff that he says. And he's always like, "Good job, Larry." Like, you know what I'm saying? And the stuff that he says where he's just like, he raps about like waking up, drinking a smoothie, riding his bike, picking up his son from school, running a business, making his money,
and that's important.
Spending some money.
That's important. That's important because we find too just lately in a lot of hip hop, just like Kanye said, and I'm gonna fuck your bitch. I'm gonna kill this nigga. I'm gonna move these bricks.
Too much. It's like, y'all
I'm gonna hit these licks. It's like, you know what? After a while, it's like, they clone Tyrone. It's like, you know what? I'm starting to feel like you guys are all about white supremacy rap. And after a while, you're like, I can't hang on, and I'm like, no, this music isn't for me. And I found myself looking outside of just what's happening in 2023. I ended up going back. You mentioned Roy Ayers.
Oh yeah.
I went back to Yusuf Lateef. My dad was a musician.
Lateef is awesome.
Yusuf Lateef and Idris Muhammad. And
Idris
I said, you know
amazing.
what?
Eddie Kendricks.
Oh man.
These guys. Yeah.
Cool in the game.
Yeah.
And I said, let me just take a step back from everything that's happening right now.
I said to my friend once, I was like, yo, there's not enough love in between your ears.
Hey,
bro.
come on now. Come on now.
You can't just. That stuff is, listen, I like the hippity hoppity hop stuff
of
too.
Course.
Listen, I love me some Griselda. I ain't gonna hold you.
Shout out to Griselda.
Westside Gun is the guy.
Yeah.
But I that's small doses. You can't live off that. You know what I'm saying? And even I think Westside knows that when you listen to the music that he's creating, and he's trying to flip it and create art. And his music to me sounds like, I told my friend the other day, I said it sounds like Saturday morning cartoons. It's like listening to he's like a wrestler, he's a character,
good. Yeah.
So it's just exciting. It gets you pumped up. But like a lot of the stuff, I don't want to beat down the kids, but a lot of the stuff that the kids are doing right now,
It's
I
so
just don't see it
toxic.
as sustainable, and I think it's a little destructive.
Mm-hmm.
But I just hope that they find their way into something that is bigger
Mm-hmm.
and just as profitable
Mm-hmm.
and safer.
Absolutely.
You know?
Have you ever had a conversation with someone who only listens to trap?
Yeah,
It is so
I can't
toxic.
have a conversation with them. That's the
It's
thing.
so mind numbing.
Yeah.
And it's just such a disappointment.
You can't talk to them.
You
They
can't talk
realize
to
that
them.
they're
They're programmed.
No, the person who listens to that all day cannot effectively communicate, because that music is not about effective communication.
Mm-hmm.
It's the antithesis of effective communicating. It's what I'm going to do when I don't know how to communicate. So you can't talk to them,
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
The only thing that you can do with them is you can show them, if you can show the kids how to make money
Mm-hmm.
doing something that's productive,
Mm.
then you can start to talk to them.
Right.
Then, because that's what, when I can feed myself, I can listen.
Right.
So I think that's the only way I can talk to them. It's just like, you want to make some money?
Right.
Can I show you something that can keep
An
you
alternative? Exactly.
and you can put some money in your pockets?
Exactly.
And then I think that things change,
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anyone that you see rising up in female rap that, the viewers can get, hip to?
Rap is hard.
Yeah.
There's so much of it that is just, I'm a father and a husband now. Like,
Come on now.
It's hard to listen to.
It is.
I will say is, I just think about women in music just in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think, someone who is really impressive and I think is monumental is her.
Mm-hmm.
Her.
Yeah.
So it's funny because I'm going to the Dave Chappelle show this Wednesday.
Okay. Shout out to Dave Chappelle.
Shout out to Dave.
Shout out to Yellow Springs.
Yeah. And I went to see him the last time he was in New York at the Garden. And he incorporates music into his stuff. And he brought her out at the end of the last show I went to.
Oh, nice.
And I never really heard her music. But I saw her, she was performing on stage live. And I was like, oh my God, how did I miss
incredible.
this? She's amazing.
Yeah.
And her whole performance, I was just like, yo, this is Prince.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yo, she's playing like 5 instruments. She went crazy on the drums. They threw a guitar at her. She caught it and started playing it.
Oh yeah.
I was like, yo, she's badass.
Wow.
Like,
shout out to her.
She's an amazing musician, songwriter, and I started listening to her music. Her music is incredible.
Excellent.
I think we need more R&B. I think we have enough rap. I think there's enough rappers. I think people need to pick up instruments again.
Mm-hmm.
I think they need to teach themselves how to make music. I think we need real music. I think the digital music is not on that vibratory frequency that uplifts. I think it's like all like just bottom based, and that's cool, but you need to lift yourself up. If you're not listening to anything positive, you're not going to have anything positive going in your life.
Absolutely. At 50, hip hop, we got to step it up.
Yeah.
We got to step it up as a community. Hip hop.
But Rhapsody's awesome.
Rhapsody's
I've heard
incredible.
her music. She's an amazing lyricist.
Yeah. I've been listening to Scarlett
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's got that, that she reminds me of Rod Digger. And,
I really like her energy, and I like her story, and I do enjoy that it seems to be that people are galvanizing around her and trying to lift her up. Listen, if the ladies got to go through this right now, then that's what they got to go through, because the guys have been profiting off of this for a very long
while.
time.
Yeah.
So at the very least, I say, if you can control your own narrative and your own message, God bless. I hope they collectively make it out to what the next side is, because I do also remember, 10 years ago, nobody was trying to listen to women rappers.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was not a thing. You think about the MC Lights and the Missy Elliott's and the Lil Kims and the things that they had to do to break through. They really had to grind.
They had to have lyrics.
Yeah. And now it's like you go in the studio one time and catch a hit, but at the same time, you change your whole family's life. So
yeah, so it's a hustle.
Yeah, I can't be all the way mad at them, but I do like how people are getting around Scarlett, because there isn't a lot of women in music in general, but especially rap, that look like her.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's as dark skinned as she is.
Exactly.
And that is being ushered to the forefront. So I just think, just for imagery alone, it's important. I'm glad she exists.
Yeah. Shout out to Scarlett. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna just go ahead and say thank you.
Okay.
Perri Dash, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome. I'm usually in your chair. I'm not the person typically getting
I'm
interviewed.
just honored to just be able to talk to you today. And so thanks again so much for accepting the invitation.
Thank you. Absolutely.
And thank you for tuning in to the Queen's Address. And peace, Queen, peace, King, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Peace.
Queen's